That had to have been one of the most incredibly lackluster and frustrating performances we have seen from the Flames all season long.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, we are going to be talking about the abysmal performance in Tampa Bay, along with the latest rumors coming out of Calgary and looking ahead because there's really no point in staying stuck in the past. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's dive right into this because I really don't want to spend too much time talking about this loss. I think that Dustin Wolf getting shut out was not necessarily or not Dustin Wolf getting shut out, sorry. Vasilevsky getting shut out was really a bummer. Obviously, we know the Flames don't have the same level of offense and high-end skill that the Tampa Bay Lightning have, but you would still hope that at some point they would be able to sneak just sneak just one by him. And no. Yesterday I said I would love to see Wolf and Vasilevsky start because it would be a goalie duel, and I was wrong. Great job for Vasilevsky. Dustin Wolf is the reason this game was not 6-0. Uh, I don't really know how many times we can say you need to play a full effort, like a full 60-minute effort if you want to win. You can't just have these spurts of energy. Like the fight at the end of the game was, I feel like, the most emotion we saw out of them the entire night. It did not feel like it was a good game. It felt like obviously emotions had boiled over and spilled over. Emotional night, I would say, for Blake Coleman, who was playing in his 600th NHL game, and he obviously won 2 cups with Tampa. Ryan Lomberg hates the Tampa Bay Lightning, and overall, they're just a good team, and it's very hard to not feel that build up. I thought that Joel Hanley had a fantastic defensive effort throughout the night. I know that he isn't going to go out there and put on a clinic every single night, but those nights where he is making an impact, whether it is, scoring that one goal in 31 games or like tonight, just, playing very good defense with his long reaching and just effort. And I feel like sometimes that's something we don't always see and remember because you just have players like Anderson and Weegar, I don't want to say just blocking shots, but that is a lot of their defensive style, and nothing wrong with that. So I do like what we're seeing from Hanley over these last few games. I'm very frustrated with Kevin Ball and Rasmus Anderson. That breakaway in the first period was just absolutely avoidable, unacceptable. And I mean, thank goodness Wolf was able to stop it, but you can't allow that to happen, especially when Tampa is such a faster team. And I think that's what kills me here is because you want to say you're competitive. You want to say, "Oh, we're a playoff team," but then when you go up against a team that is a playoff team, you're nowhere to be found. And it's just disheartening, I guess. Like you think, great, like we're making progress. This team wants to, continue to move in the right direction, and they're walking the walk while talking the talk. But then something like that happens, and it's just like, okay, um, maybe we don't need to be making this playoff push. And I understand why, you know, people are just riding out the rest of the season indifferent. But if the Flames want to have any sort of attempt or shot in making the playoffs, they're going to need to play with more effort. They got to play the same way they did against Washington. They beat the best team in the league. They did it fairly well, and they did it at home. And I believe they had won 16 straight home games. So that's hard to do. I don't know. It feels like this is a scheduled loss, but then you can look at this entire road trip as a scheduled loss too, because the caliber, the difference in caliber is just absurd. And, you have Vasilevsky, you have Kucherov, you have Victor Hedman, like Braden Point. There's so many better players on Tampa, and there's no denying that. But I think we're just going to leave it at that for tonight, because that's a tough loss we need to chew, swallow, digest, and move on from. Um, and I think with this next game against the Panthers, you're going to need to play a heck of a lot better. And, it's always a revenge game for certain guys on this team. So we'll have to see how that goes. But before we dive into all that, we're going to talk about the rumor mill, because I feel like there is always something floating around with the Flames, and sometimes it's a little more uh, exciting. Um, eh, yeah, exciting than others. And this time, Eric Francis believes the Flames will be making a splash for some big names this summer. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. But I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. And that's why I've turned to Trade. And let me tell you more about this coffee that is on the next level. Trade is the number one specialty coffee marketplace in the US, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they will handpick the perfect match for you. I am so excited to just have a new, quick way of starting my day with a nice boost. And I'm looking forward to trying more flavors from Trade, because I want to expand my palate. I'm so excited to try it. The subscription makes it so easy. There's no more last minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever's on the shelf, or just going to the drive-through and spending way too much money on a coffee that's not going to be made right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off of your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedon NHL for 40% off of your first order. Drinktrade.com/lockedon NHL. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. I'm so happy and grateful to have y'all here as part of your day. It means a lot. And if there's one thing about me, I love good gossip. I absolutely love hearing about everyone else's just tea and drama. Like I want to know. And one thing about the Flames is sometimes I wish I could know less, because there are very big decisions that have to be made with every hockey team. But the Flames don't want to get too ahead of themselves. I just wrote an article for the Win column about why the Flames should not trade for Mikko Rantanen, and kind of like doing that is a very Brad Treliving-esque move, and you're jumping ahead. You're once again trying to patch something that you can't, it's not going to work. And tonight, Eric Francis talked about how the Flames are going to make a splash at some big names this summer. Obviously, those two names being Rantanen and more than likely Mitch Marner, I quite honestly have a lot of hesitation about, I mean, I would say both of them, but like, I guess I just have a lot of concerns signing two players in their late 20s when we are still healing from the Jonathan Huberdeau wound. This is, I guess, something that you have to worry about with every player at this age, right? 28, 29, or 27, 28, 29. Like, you are past your prime. And that decline is going to start sooner rather than later. And I don't think the Flames necessarily need to take a gamble on that with assets being involved this at the trade deadline. However, is it also worth the risk over the summer? Well, how long are we talking? Are we doing 7 years? Because I don't think we should. I don't think the Flames are in any position to be handing out long-term contracts like that unless you are Connor Zary, Dustin Wolf, and heck, Matt Coronado. Those three players are the only ones that I want to see anything like beyond like 6 years, beyond 5, 4, beyond 4. That's it. I don't necessarily think the Flames are in a position to be signing these big name players that are this late in their career that, that's great that they have playoff experience. Do not get me wrong. Those are the types of players you obviously want on your team. But if your team is not going to make the playoffs, truthfully, what are we doing? Signing Mitch Marner or Rantanen for 7 years, that is a very long time. And by the time the Flames are likely a competitive hockey team and ready to go on, multiple playoff runs, we're going to be talking about buying out these contracts. We are going to be talking about Jonathan Huberdeau's contract expiring. Like, we're going to be at that point, and I don't think this is something the Flames need to go down. Like, I love the idea of bringing these two players in. I do. But realistically, I feel like the puzzle pieces just aren't going to fit. And you can look at this and say, well, Jess, you don't know that either of them are going to, have such a quick decline. They could, kind of bow out gracefully, like Patrice Bergeron. Maybe. But is that an expensive long-term risk I'm willing to take? No. Quite frankly, no. I want this team to continue down the path of rebuilding, and rebuilding for competitive hockey, long-term competitive hockey. I don't want to talk about making the playoffs this year and then going back to middle of the pack next year. I want to look at this team and say, when the new arena opens, this team is going to be a playoff team. There is a time when you can go out and add bigger pieces to your rebuilding team. And I think about the Sharks. And I know you're going to laugh, the Sharks aren't good, but they have added pieces, crucial pieces, to get to this point. And they're doing it a lot better than Chicago, I will say. Adding Tyler Toffoli, that to me, that is one of the um, smarter moves, I would say, that teams made this offseason. I think that at some point, the Flames, I don't know who it's going to be at that point in time, but I think you're going to be able to bring in a Tyler Toffoli player. 3 years ago today, the Flames also traded for Tyler Toffoli. Anyways, but they're not at a position where you should be bringing in 27, 28, 29-year-old players long term. There's really no need for that. Sure, Mitch Marner is not going to sign a 4-year deal. Let's be serious. Rantanen probably isn't either. So you need to be looking at players like you did this offseason and offer, you know, 3 years, 4 years max, depending on who they are and what position they play. But to me, it's not worth the risk. Sure, you're not giving up assets, but it feels like you're walking into a big mistake. And maybe that's my recency bias with the Jonathan Huberdeau stuff declining and, you know, just being at the forefront of my mind, but I do worry that this team is going to run into the issue it ran into 3, 4, 5 years ago. The team being too old. Too old. Contracts you can't move. Players you just refuse to trade away. Your team's too slow, too old. Like, truthfully, I feel like adding long term one of them, like, you are going to just dig yourself in a deeper hole because you already have Kadri and Huberdeau as your longest tenured players, right, on contracts. And both of those guys are 30 plus. Do we need to keep adding to that pile? No. We need to get to the other side. We need more young players like Connor Zary, like Dustin Wolf, like Matt Coronado. Those are the players in that age group that we need to be seeing mixed into this group. I don't care. I'm not looking to make a one and done playoff run. I don't want to throw a lot of money at a player that it doesn't do anything for the rebuild. It doesn't do anything for the long-term success, in my humble opinion. But coming up next, we are going to wrap up the show with some sunshine and hockey talks here on Locked On Flames. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off, or you want to bet a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I am almost always going to hammer the over for the Flames, or just the game in general. And I'm going to take a Jonathan Huberdeau anytime goal, Kadri 3+ shots on net, Anderson 2+ block shots. I think that those are an easy way to kind of put a sweet parlay together. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. That's fanduel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jess Belmosto. With this road trip comes the reunification of Mackenzie Weegar, Ryan Lomberg, Jonathan Huberdeau, trying to think of any other players with the Stanley Cup champions. Yes, the Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers. Um, you know, it I hate this matchup. I think the Panthers are a very physical team, are a team that don't necessarily get penalized as often as they should. But I do think that with Ryan Lomberg and Radko Gudas being gone, it kind of worked out in the Flames' favor. Um, I think at this point, obviously the Flames are 500 over 2 games this road trip. It's better than being down and out 0-2, like I suspected. At this point in time, you have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. We talked about it earlier. You need a full 60-minute effort. You need your defense to defend. I want to see more of the Joel Hanley that we saw tonight. And I want to see that in some other players too. I am still a stark believer that Kevin Ball is not a top pairing defenseman. And I don't necessarily know what the Flames can do. I think they should just next season Zane Parik, sure. Why not? Like, just throw him in this lineup. He's having an incredible season, and feels like it might be a little early, but you know what? I just need some defense. That's all I'm asking. You could call up Hunter Brewster too. Honestly, you could. I don't want to say they'd be an upgrade over Kevin Ball, but at least you would be doing something, moving your prospects forward. And I have a hard time saying this team could make the playoffs when they have a difficult time getting up against a playoff caliber team. I understand. It's a road trip, start of a road trip after a break, but you can only make so many excuses. You should not be leaving your goaltender out to dry like that. Honestly, I hope that Dustin Wolf is keeping a running tab of every goal against that, like Rasmus Anderson's on the ice for. Anything, truthfully, I would just hand him a list and say, these are my favorite bottles of wine or scotch, and this is my favorite cut of steak, and I'll see you in April. But in all seriousness, like, they just have to be better. And I know that that's so easy to say, but if you are going into the playoffs and you're playing the Winnipeg Jets, you're playing another Vasilevsky tier goaltender with Connor Hellebuck. You think getting 0 past Vasi tonight is a good sign for what you're going to do in the playoffs against Winnipeg? Are you sure? It doesn't sound right. It does not feel right because it isn't right. And I want this team to be successful. I want this team to be better. And I think the only way that they're going to do that is by continuing along in the rebuild and not losing sight of that vision. Because you could go out and sign and trade for someone at the deadline, but you're not in a position where it's going to be a real, like, enough of a needle mover to make you a contender. Like, truly, unless you're bringing in like Connor McDavid or a player of that caliber. Maybe. But it's just a little discouraging, I guess. And losses happen. Like, that's not what's discouraging. But I guess the lack of energy, the lack of emotions up until the very end, I don't expect players to go out there and like throw big hits, dangerous hits to kind of like shift the momentum of the game, because I think that that's stupid. You should be able to do that without that. A big hit, yeah, sure, but let's make sure it's a good hit. You need to be able to generate. You need that game breaker. You need that Matthew Tkachuk. You need that Johnny Gaudreau. You need to have players that you can count on to consistently score and put you back in the game. Flames do not have that. So, a work in progress. And that's, where we need to reevaluate things and make sure our priorities are still all in order. But that will do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. We will wrap up the month tomorrow with some more trade deadline talk, any other, reports that are coming out. Could we see a Flame or two on the move come next week? Find out that and more on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. And I'll see you tomorrow.